So, first question, as I ask everybody, Kyle, how did you get started in mixed martial arts?
So when I was like 4 or 5 years old, I saw Rocky for the first time, and then I wanted to be a boxer. Coming from a small town in Huntsville, Ontario, Canada, didn't really have the opportunity to pursue boxing. There wasn't really any gyms or anything like that. So it wasn't until I was going into high school that I started getting serious about it and started researching, and I was able to find Muskoka kickboxing, which was about half an hour, 40 minutes away, and I started traveling down there to do the kickboxing and jujitsu classes. And that was in 2005. So that's right when the Ultimate Fighter, the very first season, came out. So I watched that, and I kind of decided that's what I wanted to do instead of just boxing.
Yeah, yeah. And talk to me a little bit about your amateur career and your early pro career as well.
Yeah, so as soon as I started training in 2005, I was 14. I think I trained for about a month or so, and I started doing jujitsu tournaments. So I did jujitsu tournaments for like 4 or so years until I was about 18. Then I started doing amateur kickboxing fights. I did that for about a year. Then I started doing amateur MMA fights, traveling all over Canada and the northern U.S. to do the amateur MMA fights. Then in 2012, I turned pro in mixed martial arts.
Yeah, yeah. And so you've had your early pro career, and you've had a very successful start to your career. Coming to the UFC, and you've now had 4 fights. Your first victory in the UFC came against Polo Reyes in September 2019. Talk to me about that feeling about getting your first victory in the octagon.
I just felt like everything kind of finally came together for me. My first fight in the UFC, I took on about 3 days' notice, and it was at lightweight.
Yeah,
And I was really mainly competing at featherweight at the time. I fought at lightweight a few times just because like I was traveling to Romania, or there was usually other circumstances that the reason I fought up at 155. But yeah, I did most of my career at 145, but took that first fight, 3 days' notice, and I was able to go in and kind of put on a good show, for the first first round against Diego Ferreira. But yeah, just the 3 days notice, wasn't really prepared, didn't have the cardio to go 3 rounds, so he was able to win that fight. Then my second fight, I finally was fighting at 145 against Matt Sales. I had a good training camp, everything went well, but it was my first training camp in the UFC and everything, so we kind of went above and beyond. And I did, my training camp down in Las Vegas at the UFC Performance Institute and stuff like that, which was great because it's all, like top of the line stuff. But just for, my sport specific training, I didn't feel like I got the best work. I brought a couple of coaches down with me, but it was just different. I was in great physical shape and stuff like that. Just I wasn't able to get the same kind of sparring and jujitsu work in as I'm used to here at home. So for my third fight in the UFC, against Polo Reyes, I was able to do my whole training camp here at home, and I think everything kind of came together. The weight cut was good. I was able to go in and perform, how I feel like I should be able to perform, and everything was great. So yeah, I definitely felt like a dream come true, and the real start to my UFC career.
yeah. And I know you've won lower promotion titles. Was the first victory in the UFC your favorite moment of your MMA career?
Yeah, so I mean, definitely winning in the UFC because it solidified everything. But I mean, beating Jonathan Brookins, was a great fight. That was before I was in the UFC, so he was my first kind of UFC veteran that I fought, and so it was nice to know that I could compete at that level and beat a former Ultimate Fighter winner and a UFC veteran. I also fought a guy named Ainsley Robinson. He was an Olympic level wrestler. I competed in the Olympics, so it was another kind of stepping stone. I felt to be able to beat an Olympic level wrestler, then to beat an Ultimate Fighter winner. I think were all great steps in my career to getting to the UFC.
Yeah, and another victory I noticed on your journey to the UFC was against TKO win over Cam Worthy, UFC lightweight. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, one of my last fights before the UFC was against Conor Worthy, and we fought at 145. He came in, I believe he missed weight. I think he tried to make weight, but I don't think he ever officially made weight. But yeah, and then I fought him, and I was able to knock him out in 40 seconds or something like that. Like it was pretty early in the first round, and it was pretty decisive. I was able to, to put him out cold, and so he's in the UFC now. He's had a couple wins. I think he just had his first loss in the
Yeah.
UFC. But I'm planning to go up to lightweight now, so maybe that'll be another rematch, I could look at in the future and get another nice knockout in.
Yeah. So just to clarify, the plan for your next fight is to go up to lightweight.
Yeah, that's the plan. And then on Twitter the other day, actually, another promotion kind of mentioned Justin James. He's a featherweight that's also kind of bounced around at lightweight. And they said they did like a little matchmaking thing, and like, oh, what about Kyle Nelson versus Justin James? And I hopped on. I was like, yeah, absolutely, sounds like a great fight for me. Maybe we'll aim for something like March. And I tagged Dana White and Sean Shelby and stuff, and Justin James replied, and he said, yeah, he's in. So I've got an opponent, and we messaged the UFC, and they said they'll look into it and told me to stay ready. So hopefully we can lock that one in and get it early in the new year.
Yeah, great. Well, that was going to be one of my questions, but I think I actually spoke to you about that. So yeah, so it's so the timeline is going to be March. You're looking on.
Yeah, I mean March or February. Lightweight is going to be a lot easier for me to make weight, so I can focus more on my cardio, on my conditioning, and being in great shape as opposed to spending so much time cutting the weight. And then I think with my last fight against Billy Quarantillo, I think skill wise I had to beat. Standing on the ground, I feel like I was the better fighter overall. Just once we got into the second round, I feel like that weight cut really took something out of me. The whole training camp I was performing well, doing 4 or 5 minute rounds, and with bigger opponents and wrestling and everything, and never had any problems with my conditioning or cardio. And then just after that, the big cut down to 145, I just wasn't able to perform at all. My body kind of gave out on me early in that fight. But the first 4 or 5 minutes, of the fight, I did really well. I was picking them apart, landing big shots, stuffing the takedowns. Didn't really have any problems with them. And then going to that second round, just seemed like my body kind of gave out on me, and then fortunately went downhill from there.
Can I ask? It was a question I did want to pose to you. Looking at your career, you have fluttered in between featherweight and lightweight. I know you were saying there was reasons for that about where you were fighting and such. How different does it feel on fight night, not cutting that extra 10 pounds and being at lightweight?
So most of my fights, generally, I finished them in the first round. So there hasn't even been a lot of fights at 155 or 145 where it's gone the distance. I think I've had like 4 fights that have won by decision. And earlier in my career, I was a little bit smaller, maybe had a little less muscle mass. So at 145, I could do the 15 minutes, not have a problem. But 155, I fought, my first loss was at 155, but I did a 5-round fight against a hometown guy down in the state. And, it was a really close fight. It was back and forth. I got through 5-minute rounds of, intense, fighting with some wrestling and striking and everything. And my cardio held up good for that. But my cardio's held up good for 3-minute rounds at 145 also. So I think it's just where I'm at in my career. I've added so much muscle just through training and stuff that I'm not sure that 145 is really the best idea for me. I think I can make the weight still. It's just whether or not I'll be able to perform as well at 145.
Yeah. Now, one thing I did want to pose to you, in your UFC career, you are 1-3. How important is Kyle Nelson winning his next fight?
I think that's it. As far as UFC concerned, if I go 1-4, I'm pretty sure they'll cut me. I can't see that going well. But as long as I perform, there's no issues. I don't think there's anybody at 145 or 155, that I can't compete against and beat. You know, even in my losses in the UFC, I was winning the fights.
Yeah.
You know, when I was, you know, when I had energy and stuff like that. Just it's always been at 145, it's been a conditioning issue, and at 155, it was just a short notice issue. So if I'm able to get in there and perform how I do in training, I think I'm going to be finishing a lot of guys. So I don't see any problems, you know, going into these next fights. I think we've got everything dialed in with conditioning and cardio and how we run my training camps now. That I'm going to be able to show up in great shape and be able to fight for five-minute rounds if needed, and maintain that skill level and that output. And as long as I can maintain that, I don't think there's anybody that's going to be able to keep up with me. So I'm going to start finishing guys again.
Yeah, great. And my final question: there's been two Canadian UFC champions, George St. Pierre and Carlos Newton. Who would be your bet for the next Canadian champion that isn't yourself?
That isn't me. Maybe I'll have to lean towards Gavin Tucker. He's a 145er. Just fought this last weekend. He actually fought Billy Quarantillo. And yeah, so I've talked to Gavin lots throughout my career. Being Canadians, we've seen each other at shows and stuff, and have always talked lots. And since we've been in the UFC, I've seen him down in Vegas, and we've talked. Haven't actually had a chance to train together yet, but we were always both 145, so it was didn't really want to get too close if we're going to end up fighting. But now that I'm 155, I want to solidify myself there. And obviously Gavin makes 145 no problem. So I'd love to work with him in the future. And obviously he's on a 3-fight win streak right now, looking really good at featherweight. So I'd love to see him keep winning fights and hopefully climb that rankings and maybe challenge Alex Volkanovski.
Yeah, he looked excellent on Saturday. He really did. Yeah. How can people find you on social media, Kyle?
So on Facebook, just Kyle the Monster Nelson. On Instagram, it's the Monster 705_UFC, and on Twitter, it's the __monster.
Brilliant. And before we finish, is there anything else you'd like to say?
No, just thanks a lot for having me on, and yeah, hopefully we'll lock in that Justin James fight, and I can come on and give you a solid prediction on how I'm going to knock him out.
That would be amazing. Thanks a lot for your time today, Kyle. I will just pause the record.